as we look and stare into the abyss. You never know what's staring back at you. It's coming.
All these voices.
We had tons of activity, including a demon attack. They called JC, the founder of Shadows Den Paranormal, to puke all over the place, like projectile vomit. It was insane, and he got scratched on the neck. We captured a disembodied face that was screaming, and we also captured a couple different full-body apparitions, which was badass. Now, Baba Yaga was a Slavic witch, but she was also a supernatural guardian. And basically what she did was beat back the forces of evil from the realm of the dead, made a deal with a bunch of witches in the woods in Armenia. She sold her soul, and I am standing out here in the damn rain. I should have listened to my wife. She told me, if you're going out, bring an umbrella. I don't listen. Now I'm getting wet, so I'm sheltering underneath this tree. A nasty creature that I have actually had a run-in with myself. The bastard scratched the hell out of my car and jumped on. It was a mess. I tell the story in the show.
Are you watching? Getting a lot of activity. The spirit box is saying Satan, Paimon, and other major demons, and chanting and singing and whispering. We've never had that before. So you guys are going to have a great episode coming. The camera guy got attacked right now while we were talking. He got scratched. He said something scratched his back, and I looked at his back and it's got a scratch on it, guys.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr., and with me as always, my co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. How is everybody tonight?
On tonight's episode, we are going to be going over a pretty interesting article that old boy sent me. It's from MUFON.com, and the headline is Nevada Witnesses Describes Entity as Wings and No Face. A Nevada witness at Pahrump reported swerving around a human-like entity with wings and no face that landed in the travel lane ahead, according to testimony in case 97499. The witness was northbound along Highway 160 between mile markers 134 and 135 at 4:10 a.m. on August 27, 2018. I saw this thing land in front of my car in the street, in my travel lane, the witness stated. I didn't know what it was when I saw it, and I still don't. I don't know how to feel about it. I have no answers. It was around 4:10 a.m. It was a clear sky, no wind, no clouds. I was a little behind my schedule, so I was going fast, about 85 miles per hour. I did have my bright lights on. This event lasted about 4 or 5 seconds. I had just finished a small snack. I was listening to some music, and then suddenly this thing came from up high and landed in my travel lane on the street. Very tall, 7 feet or more. Very large wings. Smoke gray in color. I couldn't see any eyes. No face. As it was landing, the wings were out to each side of it. Once it was on the ground, it wrapped its wings around itself, as if it was bracing for an impact. The wings were wrapped around its front. It put its head down slightly and just stood there. It would not move as I approached it. The only thing I could think is, what is that? I cannot crash my car. I cannot hit this thing. It will destroy my car and put me in the hospital. So I said no and turned my wheel slightly to the left. I did this 4 times as I took my foot off the accelerator to slow my speed as I passed the thing. I did look in my rearview mirror, but it was too dark to see anything. I didn't stop because I didn't know what it was, and I didn't want it to come after me. I just kept saying out loud, what was that? What was that? What was that? Over and over. Where did it come from? What is it? Its body was like a human. Its wings and arms were one unit. There was a car in front by about a half mile and behind me by about a half mile. I don't know if anyone else saw it or not. I would like to know if anyone else has seen it. I look for it every day and wonder where it came from. And that is the end of the article. And it was put up by the Nevada MUFON State Director Sue Countess and CAG investigator Dinah Lechner. and they closed the case as information only. So that's the article. I thought it would be interesting to try to figure out what this thing might be. Also, I thought it might be interesting to start with the area that the thing was actually seen, because there's a couple interesting things about this area. It's a little bitty place, this Pahrump, right outside of Vegas. It's, I think, 62, 63 miles west of Las Vegas, Nevada, and it's up by the California border. But one interesting thing about Pahrump was actually the hometown of Art Bell. I thought that was so cool when I found that out. Now, everybody knows who Art Bell was from the Coast to Coast program. He's somebody that we think a great deal of on our show. And me and Old Boy both grew up listening to Art Bell. And he was a big influence in our lives. And I think it's kind of interesting that this happened right there at his hometown. That's kind of cool. Now, he didn't live there his whole life. He moved around. I think he went to the Philippines and back a couple times. But that was his hometown. So I thought that was very, very interesting. There are several different things that would kind of fit the bill here. When you're looking at a winged humanoid type figure, there's literally dozens and dozens of different things it could possibly be. Pretty much every mythological story has some sort of winged creature in it. You've got griffins, you've got dragons, you've got all kinds of stuff. Now, those things aren't humanoids. Those are more like birds. But there are several really interesting humanoid type bird figures that we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. And then, of course, we have the big one, which is Mothman. That could be a possibility here as well. The interesting thing about this, though, is that it said that he didn't see a face. Now, I wonder if that means the creature did not have a face, or simply that it was dark and it happened fast and he just didn't see one. But the first creature that I would like to talk about tonight is the Camazotz, or the death bat. Now, this goes all the way back to the Mayan mythologies. Now, according to legends, a small group of Mayans worshipped the death bat. It had a human body, and then it had the head of a bat, and it had bat wings. Now, many Native American cultures also have a lot of bird and bat symbology in their mythos as well. In the Native American cultures, they are pretty much always associated with either darkness or death or some sort of evil. There's also legends of a creature that is a lot like the Camazotz all through Latin America. There's several different creatures that are real similar. So basically, the legend states that pregnant women in Mexico would offer sacrifices to the bat gods. And this was supposed to ensure that they had a healthy baby. The place where this thing is supposed to live is dark caves deep, deep in the wilderness. So the pregnant women, they would go to a certain cave in Mexico where the thing was supposed to live. And they would offer up sacrifices for a healthy birth. Now, some of the early American legends, they portray the death bat as being like a supernatural creature that not only can be here on Earth, but also has origins in the underworld. And basically, he operates on a bridge between the heavens and the underworld. One of the things that a lot of not only the Mexican, but pretty much all of South America, in a lot of their mythologies, one of the things that the death bat would do would carry the villagers off when they went outside at night. If they went away from the village too far, it would actually swoop down and grab them and carry them off. Now, in some of the legends, it would carry them to the underworld. In some of the legends, it would simply carry the person back to its cave and eat them. So that's the first one. That's kind of an interesting one, I think. The next one is one that I really don't think that this is, but it's one that kind of fits the winged hominoid thing, and it's an interesting one that I really enjoy, and that's harpies. Now, harpies were usually depicted as birds, but they had like human heads, and they had real pale faces and very, very long claws on their hands. Now, I said they were usually depicted as birds, but it wasn't like they had a complete bird body. They had a mixture of bird parts and human parts. Depending on the artist that painted them or the different story that was being told about them, their appearance kind of changes. In some, they're mostly bird and only have like a human face and human hands. And in some, they pretty much look like a person with wings. So that would kind of fit this, because if you go by that illustration of what a harpy looks like, then it could be a humanoid form that has long wings. Now, harpies were extremely interesting in the different mythologies because they were originally believed to be wind spirits. And what they would do is they would actually steal food from their victims. Either while the person was eating or getting ready to eat, they would swoop in and just take their food, so the person would be hungry. There's actually a complete story in mythology about that that has to do with Jason and the Argonauts and all that, where this dude was stuck on this island and the harpies just kept coming and taking his food every time he tried to eat, and he was so hungry. And then when Jason and the Argonauts showed up, he's like, hey man, I'll tell you how to get out of here and everything you need to know if you take me away from these harpies, because they're horrible. There's a lot more to that story, but that's just a brief little overview of it. Another thing that the harpies were known to do was to snatch up evildoers, and they would carry them off to the underworld. Now that's interesting because it kind of correlates a little bit with the death bat mythology as well, because that's one of the things that was said about death bats that they would do is they would grab villagers if they left the village too late at night, and in some of those stories they would take them to the underworld. So it to me, that's kind of interesting that you have a correlation between the two, even though the harpies, the original mythology of harpies comes from Greece, and the original mythology of the death bat comes from the Mayans, which are down in South America and Mexico. Some people called the harpies the hounds of Zeus. Now that's kind of interesting to me as well, because when you think of hounds, you think of hellhounds. Like when you think of like a deity and then hounds, you're thinking of hellhounds usually. And it's interesting to me that they were called the hounds of Zeus, and it makes you think of hellhounds. And one of the things they did was snatch up evildoers and carry them to the underworld. And one of the things that hellhounds will do is collect souls for demons. There you have another correlation between the Greek mythology and a lot of the Western mythologies, which is really, really interesting to me. The harpies were usually depicted as being very ugly. Now, there were exceptions to that. In some of the artwork, they were painted as very beautiful women with wings. But in the original mythologies and the majority of the stories about harpies, they are depicted as being extremely ugly and fearsome and scary-looking creatures. They were also extremely vicious. They were cruel and very, very violent. The next one that I want to talk about comes from the native cultures, from the Yakama tribe. And that is Tataklea, which is the owl woman. Now these are extremely interesting as well. Basically, it's a race of owl women who are like monsters, basically. And they live in caves. And what they do is they hunt the local tribes. If you have people that walk away from camp alone or are isolated, especially at night, the owl women would come and snatch them up. And they would eat them. That's what they did. They preferred little children because, according to the stories, they were a lot tastier than adults because the meat was better. Now, they also fed on like snakes and rats and lizards and all those kind of things, but their preferred meal was children. The owl women were greatly feared by the native tribes, and they were considered one of the most dangerous creatures on Earth. According to the legends, after one of the owl women had drowned, her eye was actually used to create the entire species of owls. And that is why owls in the native cultures represent death and darkness in pretty much every tribe. I'm not going to say every single tribe because there might be a tribe or two out there that doesn't believe that, but in a huge majority of the Native American tribes, owls represent darkness and death. Now the Apaches have a legend of something they call Big Owl. Now Big Owl is kind of like the owl women, but it is an ogre with wings, if that makes sense. It's a man-eating ogre. And the Big Owl was basically the Native American equivalent of the boogeyman. It was like a story that parents would tell their children late at night to make them behave. to go to bed and behave themselves, because if you don't behave, then Big Al's going to come get you. Now, the interesting thing about this is you go from legend to reality a little bit here, because there have been a lot of eyewitness sightings from like southern Texas and from Mexico that have reported an owl monster. Depending on the witness report, the description varies a little bit, but they call it La Lechuza. And a lot of times when they see this owl monster, you will have death and you will have really weird, unusual, unexplained things happening. So whenever this thing shows up and there's a sighting of it, people die and weird stuff starts to take place. And you still have reports of the La Lechuza coming in today, like in our time now. You still have reports of that creature. The next one I'd like to talk about is another thing from Greek mythology, and that is the siren. Now, when I say siren, the majority of people think of either a mermaid or a mermaid-like creature that would sit on the rocks in the ocean and they would sing songs and lure sailors to their deaths. That's the general idea that people have of sirens. But if you go to the original mythologies on sirens, you find that that is not the only kind of siren. It is one kind. But like the Greek philosopher Plato said, that there were 3 different kinds of sirens. He said that there was the celestial siren, the generative siren, and the cathartic siren. Now the first, the celestial siren, was under Zeus. The generative siren was under Poseidon, and the cathartic siren was under Hades. So if you extrapolate that into the places that those people ruled, okay, those gods ruled. Zeus was the god of the air and of the earth. So the celestial sirens, they were pictured as bird people, like bird women, basically. They were women that had wings and would fly around. And they did a lot of the same things that the sirens that most people think of as being a siren did, but they just did it flying around instead of in the ocean. Now, the generative sirens that were under Poseidon, those are the normal sirens that everybody's used to talking about and hearing about, the ones that were at the ocean, and they would lure sailors to their deaths. The cathartic sirens, which were under Hades, they were found mostly in the underworld or dealing with death and darkness. They didn't deal with the air, they didn't deal with the sea. Like I said, if you go back to the beginning, the original mythologies, the sirens were believed to combine women and birds. In the early art of Greece, they were represented as birds that had large women's heads. They had bird feathers and they had scaly feet. As time went on, they were represented as female bodies with just the leg of birds. Sometimes they had wings, sometimes they didn't. And they would always be playing some sort of musical instrument. Usually it was like a harp or a lyre or a flute or something like that. Now once you get into the 10th century, they had the form of sparrows. So they had like bodies of sparrows. And they were women below the belt. And in some of the stories from then, they were like little tiny birds with women's faces, which is very strange. A lot of people think that the reason why sirens in the beginning were associated with birds was because birds sing. I mean, every morning you hear birds singing. And one of the things about sirens is they sing that song that it makes you kind of dazed and spellbound, so that you do what they want and you follow them and then they kill you. So they think that there's a correlation between the bird song and the siren song, and that is why originally they were described as having the body of birds. Also, another interesting point is in the beginning, sirens weren't just women. You had male sirens and female sirens. But around the 5th century, I believe it was, the 5th century BC, is when the male siren kind of just disappeared completely from all the artwork and all the stories, and it was just female sirens from then on. The next one I'd like to talk about is an extremely interesting one that I really enjoy, and that is the Swan Maiden. Now, the Swan Maiden is a creature that is a shifter. It shapeshifts. it goes from human form to swan form. Now, even though it's called Swan Maiden, in some of the early legends, you also had male swan maidens. It wasn't many, it was only a few, but those legends do exist, where there was actually male swan maidens as well. The transformation between human form and swan form is usually done with either a swan skin or some sort of garment that has swan feathers attached to it. It's kind of interesting because if you look at the Native American skinwalker, that's the way that is done as well, with an enchanted skin. So it's kind of interesting that this mythology kind of follows that as well. So basically, the way this legend goes is that the man, just a normal human man, will see this woman down by some body of water, whether it's a lake or a river or whatever. Usually the woman is bathing herself in most of the stories. So he sees her down there naked. He sneaks up and steals the feather garment or the swan skin, whatever she's using to transform into a swan. He steals it, takes it away, so that she can't put it back on. This prevents her from flying away, or swimming away, or running away, or getting away in any way. And it also makes her helpless so that she can't resist anything he says. So then, once he has her under his control, he forces her to become his wife. They get married, they have children. In pretty much every one of the legends, what ends up happening is one of the kids is tricked by the mother. The mother acts all depressed and bummed out, and it's just the worst thing in the world. She's beyond herself, so depressed. The kid wants to know what's wrong. What's wrong, Mom? What's happening? Why are you like this? She says that her feather garment has been stolen. So she tricks the kid into finding it for her and bringing it back to her. And in some of the legends, she just tricks the kid into telling her where it was hidden, and she goes and gets it herself. Either way, she gets back the feather garment, puts it back on, changes into a swan, and flies away. Now, she leaves the kids behind with the dad, and they never see her again. That's pretty much how each one of these stories goes. It's some variation of that. There's little things that are different, but that's the main plot line of all of these legends. Now, I think that's extremely interesting because it's different than a lot of the other kind of legends that you hear about. It's different than pretty much the rest of the mythologies. And even though you have other creatures that also shift into different things, this story stands out to me. It's really unique, and I really enjoy it. The next thing I want to talk about is also a Native American creature, and that is a trickster. Now, tricksters are not always bird creatures. Okay, I'm going to say that right off the bat. Basically, what a trickster is a creature that can also shapeshift. It can be whatever it really wants to be. The whole purpose of a trickster is to cause trouble, to play tricks, to cause mischief, to point out people's lies. So if you're a person that lies a lot and you tell tall tales and you put on airs like you're something you're not, that kind of thing, then a trickster is going to call you out on that. He's going to make sure everybody knows you're full of it. He likes to stir the pot. He likes to cause trouble. A trickster likes to drive people absolutely crazy. The other thing a trickster likes to do is make people laugh. That's one of the main purposes of a lot of the things that he does, is to cause trouble, play pranks, so that people laugh about it. Now, obviously, the person getting pranked or the person having the trick played on them or getting their lies exposed, they're not too happy about the situation. But the idea is that everybody else is going to get a good chuckle out of it. Now, he doesn't just do this because he's a jerk. There is a reason why it is important for the trickster to make everybody else laugh. It is believed in the majority of the native cultures, probably all, but once again, I'm not going to say all because I don't know for sure. But the majority of the native cultures, it is important to laugh, because it is believed that before you can do any kind of journeying into the spirit world or get in touch with ancestors, before you can do any of that, you have to laugh. And the reason you have to laugh is because it kind of breaks the tension and kind of clears out all the negative so that you can go in fresh and concentrate and do what you need to do. It's an extremely important first step that needs to be taken when you're doing anything with the spirit world. So the trickster plays an important role there because he causes the people to get a good laugh, and that enables them to be able to do the things in the spirit world that they need to do. Now, getting back to the bird man, bird woman, bird person thing, tricksters are shifters as well. They can appear as pretty much whatever they want to appear as, much like the jinn can. So a lot of times what a trickster will do is appear as an animal. But when a trickster appears as an animal, it's never like a normal animal. So if it decides it wants to be a deer, you're not going to be looking at a deer thinking it's a deer. It's going to be some half man, half deer thing. So you can always tell that it's not a normal animal because it's got person parts. So if this thing from this article was a trickster, because it is on southern Paiute land is where this took place. That's where that tribe was and still is in this area. So if it was a trickster that this person saw, it could very well have appeared in that form had it chosen to. And the whole thing with having no face, that would fit in with the trickster too, just because it's be something he'd do just to be weird, you know, and just to make people like, what the heck is that? That's strange. You know, who knows? Could it be a trickster? Maybe. Is it a trickster? Don't know for sure, but it's possible. They have been known to appear as bird people hybrid kind of creatures. There's one the Cree had that is called, and this is very hard to pronounce, but it's Wissakedjak, and that is a Cree legend of a bird man. He watches after the tribe and makes sure that everybody's okay and rights wrongs and all that kind of stuff. So there is precedent in the Native American cultures of having half man, half bird creatures. There's actually a whole lot of them. Way too many to go through tonight, but a lot of them are different forms of tricksters. So that's why I decided just to do tricksters as a whole. The last one that we'll talk about is the obvious one, the one that I thought of when I first read this article, and that's Mothman. We've done multiple shows on Mothman already, so I'm not going to go way into detail on Mothman because we've done it several times, but there have been a whole lot of Mothman type sightings that have taken place all over this area, from California to Nevada, all the way over even into Illinois and Indiana, and all the way down to Texas. That whole part of the country, and now granted that's like half the country, I understand that, but in that whole area there have been a lot of different sightings that have been taking place over an extended period of time of a Mothman type creature. If it is Mothman, then we can expect some sort of tragedy to be happening at some point, because that's kind of the MO of Mothman. It shows up sometimes years in advance of a tragedy, and the closer you get to that tragedy actually happening, the closer together those sightings will be. So in other words, it'll start out having a sighting, and then maybe a year later you have another sighting, and then maybe 8 months later you have another sighting, and then as it gets closer to the event, you'll start having sightings every week, and then every day, and then multiple times a day before whatever bad thing happens. So if it is Mothman, then that is a very large area for Mothman to be covering. So you have to think, what kind of event could take place that could cover that whole half of the country? That's a tremendous amount of area. What could be taking place that could be that big that would affect that many areas where this thing has been seen? The only thing really that comes to mind besides some sort of nuclear attack or something like that, maybe some sort of really large meteor impact, But barring something crazy like that, the thing that really pops out to me here and is a huge red flag is Yellowstone. The super volcano at Yellowstone. It was due to explode it's like I think every 65,000 years or something it goes off, and we are overdue to when it was supposed to have exploded. So, in other words, it could explode any day. There is a lot of seismic activity underneath that and in that area. There is a lot of geyser activity there, which shows geothermal disruptions. There's a lot of power underneath Yellowstone. When that super volcano goes off, that entire half of the country is in trouble. You're going to have one hell of a big blast zone where everybody's dead right away, because it's going to be like a bomb went off there in a very large, probably around 100 miles around that volcano when it explodes is gone. But you're also going to have dust and sulfur and pulverized rock filling the air over like half the country, to where it's going to become like nighttime during the day. And it's going to last for months and months and months. This is not really an extinction level event because mankind will go on, but for that half of the country, it might as well be an extinction level event. It's going to be that bad. You're looking at probably tens of millions of deaths. Easy. It's going to be a hell of a lot of people that are dead because of this. Now, some will die right away. Some will die within the first couple days. And then you're going to have some people that live through it. But they will die a lot earlier than they're supposed to die from breathing in that material. Because basically what you have, you're going to end up with what they used to call coal miner's lung. And basically what causes that is you're breathing in this pulverized rock, and it's very tiny, almost microscopic pieces of rock, but they're sharp. So what happens is you breathe those down your lungs, and it perforates your lungs. It makes little small incisions all throughout your lungs, and it ends up giving you what they call coal miner's lung, and you die early from that. So that's bad news. Now, I believe that is going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's happened multiple times in the past, and it's caused a hell of a big amount of damage when it goes off. It's going to happen again. It's due to happen again. It's overdue, actually, to happen again. It will happen again. You have, like I said before, seismic activity there. You have earthquakes that are happening. There's a lot of warning signs that this thing is going to end up blowing. Now, will it blow today? Will it blow next month? Within the next year or two? Or will it blow within the next 20 years? I don't know. There's no way really to tell. Because what happens is all that pressure builds up inside, and it can look like it's about ready to blow. But if you have a small rupture somewhere, it can let off some of that pressure, and it can kind of stall it off for a while. So who knows when it goes off? But it will go off. And when it does, it ain't going to be pretty. It could be tomorrow. It could be 20 years from now. We just don't know. Is that the event that Mothman is warning about here? It's very possible, because it definitely fits the bill of being a very large-scale event. If this is Mothman we're talking about here. If it's one of these other things, who knows? Now, a lot of people think angel when they think humanoid with wings. But we did a whole show on whether or not angels have wings, and your normal angels do not. You do have some forms of angels that do have wings, but they are not the heavenly host angels. A lot of those are the ones that fell with Lucifer. I'm not going to get way deep into that. One, because we just simply don't have time. And two, because there's really no chance that this is a normal angel. If it's an angelic formed kind of being, then it's a demonic one. One of the ones that fell, and that's bad news too. If you want to know more about that, go to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/James Hershey Jr., and find the show, Do Angels Have Wings? We go into great detail in that episode explaining why angels do not have wings, what types of angels actually do and what don't, and we give all the details there. So if you're interested in that, go check the YouTube channel and find that show. I'm going to throw over to Old Boy now and get his opinions on the article and what he thinks it might be. So, Old Boy, go ahead, brother.
Thank you, brother. And I'll tell you what I think it is right now. I think it's probably Mothman. It sounds like it. I mean, I'm about 80% sure, 85. Or it could be something new. You never know. The Jersey Devil flies around too. It looks like some kind of weird creature too. There's a lot of weird things around there. So it could possibly be the Mothman. That's what I'm thinking. I mean, just what you said, but it said faceless. So that's why I'm getting to the whole. But it didn't say it had red eyes. So that's one thing that kind of threw it off. But it's probably Mothman, or that's what I'm gonna say. That's what I think it is. When you were talking about, Yellowstone, that could happen. It's a possibility. That would suck because, like you said, we're all screwed. But they know how to make reliefs in the crack. They do know how to do what you were talking about, how there was a crack and it lets go some of the pressure. They know how to do that, and they do know when it could erupt. Well, they're not going to know by point, but when it's going to happen. But they do have equipment there now, like with earthquakes. So they can do certain things now to prevent. Not 100%, but it's still going to happen. But they can prevent it for at least another 50, 60 years if they keep doing what they're doing. They'll just release cracks. But getting off subject on that, with all these flying creatures, like he was talking about harpies and sirens. If you guys seen Jason and Argonauts, they had harpies in there, and they would attack that old man for, I guess he disgraced the gods, or he used his abilities for bad. And they kept. I remember watching that movie, and they would kept. They'd be able to eat like one or two bites, and then they would take all his food and whatever was left over, he'd eat it. But they were some ugly looking things because they had like women's faces, but they had weird wings and talons, like it was like a weird creature. They were like kind of ugly looking too. They had them all skelly too. I don't know if you guys ever seen that movie. If you guys want to check that out movie, that's a great movie anyway. It's like one of my favorites. Some of the best stuff in those kind of movies, like Sinbad. The guy who made all those movies anyway, I loved him. He did all the special effects. He did in a lot of movies like Clash of the Titans. I liked all that kind of stuff with mythology. Maybe one day we'll do a show about that, about the different gods and monsters like Cyclops and all that stuff and sirens, and we can get into that. I'm glad we kind of brought that up. I've always wanted to do a show. We talked about that before. But with these flying things, a lot of people are starting to see a lot more of these. And I told James it could have been they see the Thunderbird, but it's also just, they think it's a big pterodactyl. This thing was only 7-8 feet. Again, Mothman. The stuff it did, we've done shows before. If you listen to it, it's about Mothman. The way it flies over everybody's 7-8 feet tall, big wide wingspan. Sound no face. It sounds like that. It could be a demon too, fallen angel, like James was saying. Not impossible. Or a new kind of creature we don't know about yet. That could be a possibility. Some flying, there's a lot of reptilian creatures being seen there. Not flying, that's kind of weird. That I haven't heard anything flying around. That's a new one for me other than Mothman. I've heard like the Jersey Devil, Mothman, sirens, but you don't really hear too much about sirens anymore. Mothman's probably what it was, and that's where I would bet on. I mean, I wouldn't lose any money probably on that. Or probably somebody thought it was something and it could have been an owl. Because owls get really big, but not 7 feet tall. So, I mean, that's why I always laugh when they say that. But owls can get about 4 feet high. They're pretty big. Barn owls, they get really big. They got a big wide wingspan too. But I don't think that's what it is. Because you can see owls kind of have a little bit of a beak, and you could tell. They screech too, so he didn't say nothing too much about screeching sounds. But if you guys want to check out, like he was saying, go check out. We talk about Mothman in a couple shows, and then do angels have wings? And check those out. We do a couple shows about this. So this is just another show we saw. I sent it to James. I thought it was interesting. It was something different. It may not be Mothman. It might be a whole new creature. It's flying around attacking people. You know, it could be a whole new thing that they just seen, and it could be a reptilian flying around. You know, we don't know. We don't know what it is. It could be anything. It could be fake for all we know. I mean, there's a 25% of chance I think it might not even be what they say it is. But it's to me, I think it might be Mothman or, you know, some kind of flying demon. Mothman, I think, remember, James, I think Mothman may be a fallen angel anyway, or a demon. So, I mean, it's not too far away from that anyway. So, because we've talked about that in the last show, how I thought that might be a demon. Because there's demons that look like Mothman that assemble everything about him. And sorry, I probably ruined that word, but it looks like a lot like a couple of the demons that's in that are fallen angels. So that it could be that too. That could be not far off as much as you think. So it's because remember, it only comes around when bad things happen. But that's another thing. Nothing bad happens. So that's kind of weird to me. Might be something new. You never know. There's always kinds of new creatures coming around, you know, and we don't know what they are. So it could be anything. It could be a flying pig for all you know. I mean, I'm just showing you an example. I don't think that's what it is. It could be. It could be anything. But I think it's probably Mothman. Maybe we're going to have another sighting with something happen, and after that, some kind of national something's going to happen bad. I hope not, because that's what always happens when Mothman comes around. Something bad happens, so maybe it's warning. But the area is kind of weird too. Remember that usually it's not around that area, so. But it probably is. I gotta agree with you. I'm gonna go with Mothman.
Yeah, if I had to put money on it, I would go Mothman as well, simply because it fits. It fits better than any of the other creatures would fit. The only problem is the no face thing, but I tend to think that might just be because the encounter happened so quick. I mean, remember, this dude is driving down the road. He's cruising 85 miles an hour. And the whole thing, he says, takes maybe 4 or 5 seconds. And at that speed, something gigantic like that swoops down out of the sky and lands in the road in front of you. You see it. You start hitting your brakes and turning, trying to get over out of the way. You zip by the thing, and then it's gone. So even if the whole thing took 4 or 5 seconds, he probably only got a look at this thing for maybe 2 seconds. You know, because he's trying to figure out how to turn and how to not wreck his car, and there's that whole fear and adrenaline and everything that kicks in. So I'm kind of chalking up the no face thing to just he didn't notice a face. I'm sure the thing probably had a face, he just didn't notice it. If not, if it truly had no face, then you're getting into very strange territory. You know, you're talking Slender Man kind of territory then. Who knows at that point? But I would, if I had to put money on it, I would say probably Mothman. And I would say probably the reason that nothing has happened is simply just because it hasn't happened yet. You know, I think that there will be something that takes place in that area. And the thing I was saying about Yellowstone, Old Boy had mentioned that they have ways that they can reduce that pressure. And that is true. There are techniques that they have developed that they can use to try to alleviate that pressure. The problem is the technique that they want to use to alleviate the pressure has a very good chance of causing the whole thing to explode. We did a show on this very subject, actually, a pretty good amount of time ago. So if you want to find that show on the Yellowstone supervolcano, it's on the YouTube channel as well, where I really go into detail on this. But really quickly, just to try to sum up real quick what they want to do. Basically, they want to drill a hole down into the volcano, okay, down into the actual magma core. And they want to shoot high pressurized water down into the magma core to cool it. The idea is this will alleviate the pressure and cause it not to explode. The problem is it's a sealed system, and when you introduce water into a superheated area like that, because remember, this is magma, this is lava. Okay, it's hot as hell down there. It's hot enough to melt anything it touches. So you're introducing a large volume of water to a superheated environment. What's going to happen? What happens when water gets hot? It turns to steam. So you have an enclosed, pressurized system that you are shooting a vast amount of water into at high pressure. So you're going to have a hell of a lot of steam forming in a very short amount of time. So basically, what you're doing is creating a gigantic bomb. That pressure has to go somewhere. If it is at the point where it's close to going off anyway, and you introduce all that water that gets turned into steam, and as it heats, it expands, all that pressure from the steam has got to go somewhere. It can't go back up the hole that you drilled because you're shooting water down that hole. Okay, so it can't go back up that hole. That's not a vent hole for it to escape. That hole is occupied by water. So nothing's going back up it. So where is that steam going to go? Where's that pressure going to go? It's going to blow up. That's what happens to steam engines when they explode. Like, you remember hearing about the old times when they used steamships, and sometimes they would explode because too much pressure built up inside. That's what's going to happen if they do that. When they shoot that water down there, it's like pulling the pin on a grenade. It's going to explode. It has to. Where the hell is the steam going to go? That pressure is added to the pressure that's already there. It's like blowing up a balloon. At some point, it's going to pop. There's just too much pressure. It can't contain it. That's the problem with the approach that they've come up with to try to lessen the pressure by cooling it. It doesn't make sense. It's not going to work. It's going to cause that thing to go off. So by trying to make it not go off, what they're actually going to do, I think, in my opinion, is cause it to erupt. But it's not going to erupt like it would normally erupt, where it blasts a hole and you have a smaller scale explosion and magma coming out. When this thing goes, if they do this, you are going to have catastrophic failure of the magma core. You are going to have an explosion that is going to be like, I would say, worse than a nuclear bomb going off, as far as the pure energy and destructive power that this thing is going to have. Because remember, this is a supervolcano. When you're dealing with geothermal forces of the Earth, that is power on a scale you can't even imagine. When that blows up, it's going to be catastrophic. It's not even the right word for it. It's going to be apocalyptic. It's going to be horrifyingly bad. But this is their approach that they have decided is the right way to handle this. And I just honestly don't know what the hell they're thinking. To me, it just makes absolutely no sense. Now, that being said, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they have figured out a way to do it where it won't blow up. I don't see it working. As an illustration of this, take a pan and put it on the stove. Get it extremely hot. And then dump a bunch of water in it real quick and see what happens. The first water that hits that is just going to bubble up and turn to steam. It's going to sizzle like hell. Now you add enough water in and it'll cool it to the point where it's fine. Now there's no lid on this pan, so there's a place for all that pressure to escape. Do the same thing in like a pressure cooker that is sealed. whole different outcome. You build too much pressure up, it'll blow up. That's what we're talking here. But I kind of went way too long with that, so we are almost out of time. So I'm going to throw back over to Old Boy so he can do his final wrap-up and shout-outs.
Thank you, brother. And this is quite an interesting show. You know, just to let everybody know, we just saw this. I saw this a couple days ago, sent it to him. Just wanted to get some more Mothman information out there. I enjoy doing Mothman. It's one of my most interesting creatures. I love talking about him, and you know, it seems like this might be it. It might be another creature for all we know, but it's just something I wanted to talk about and get it out there. And I enjoy, like I said, this is one of the creatures top 5, I think, probably, that I like. Probably top 3. You know, Bigfoot being number 1. That's always my all-time favorite in crypto. And then probably Nessie, and then probably Mothman, and then Dogman, and then God, there's so many. Jersey Devil. Those are my top 5. So now you guys know my top 5 crypto, and I love paranormal, so you all know that. So, and then just to let you know, our new episode came out of me. I was down in the cellar where there's supposedly a boy had died, and there's supposed to be a demon there, and it's out in the middle of Lucerne Valley. Yeah, actually, I'm down in the cellar at Go Bar. That's it, Mr. Go Bar's ranch. He's passed away a long time ago, but it's supposed to be haunted with demons, so you guys can check that out too. It's out there. So I hope everybody has a great night. Check out our YouTube page, James Hershey Jr. You know, you want to listen to all our shows, our new shows, or check us out on Parax Radio. We're going to try to get on iTunes soon. We're talking about other platforms that we're going to do. So, you know, we got the YouTube show too. You know, so you guys can check that out. Me and James are doing different videos all the time and trying to go to different haunted places, and we'll try to get some crypto too eventually, so we can try to go see if something's real, like Bigfoot or something. But that's going to be James' department because he lives in the mountains. I live in the desert. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Check out our new line of clothing. We got new shirts and blankets, everything you guys want. We're going to try to get hats next. So if you guys want something, let us know, or go in the shop. He'll tell you where to go on the merchandise. So I hope everybody has a great night. Blessed be Misfits, Sugar Ladies, Demon Hunters, and Monster Lovers. I love you. Have a great night, and blessed be.
Yeah, this episode was kind of fun. I enjoyed this one because this is a rare kind of thing that we do, because usually we plan out what we're going to do the episode on a week in advance, and I have plenty of time to kind of figure out what I want to talk about and all that kind of stuff. This one literally was a couple days ago, and I didn't really start even working on it until yesterday, as far as figuring out what I wanted to talk about on the show and all that. And this is one of those ones that's just kind of my lifetime of researching these things. So I know about a bunch of different bird-like hominoid kind of creatures. I just kind of talked about some of the ones I knew about and some of the stories. And it was a fun one because it's kind of one of those going by the seat of your pants and just talking about what you already know, which is kind of fun, you know, to do that every once in a while. I'm lucky that I've been interested in these things pretty much my entire life. I spent my childhood almost every day in libraries all day, reading about these creatures and all the different stuff, and it's been a lifelong passion of mine. So it's fun sometimes to get to talk about a bunch of different creatures in one show. I guess that's basically what I'm getting at. But the YouTube channel is youtube.com/James Hershey Jr. As Old Boy said, the new episode of Tales from the Abyss just dropped today, so that'll be on the channel for you guys to check out. It's a fun episode. It's extremely, extremely creepy at the end of that episode. The last half of that episode it'll make your skin crawl. So check that out. Please go there and subscribe to the channel and enjoy it. The merchandise store is teespring.com/stores/staring into the abyss. TEESPRING.com/stores with an S on the end /staring into the abyss. That's where all the merch is. There's shirts, blankets, cell phone cases, posters, towels, all kinds of stuff. So if you guys are into merch and that's something you want, that's where you can pick it up. Thank you guys so much for listening to the episode. Thank you for all the support that you give us. We greatly, greatly appreciate you. There's a lot more coming in the future. We're never going to stop doing staring because I love doing this show. I love teaching. I love talking about these things, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. So this will continue as long as we can do it. But also, in addition to staring, we're also doing Tales from the Abyss, and that is the YouTube TV show. That might end up on another channel at some point. There has been talk with different networks and talk with different providers about possibly carrying the show. That's a future thing. That's not happening right now, but it may happen in the future. But that is something that we also enjoy doing because we enjoy showing you when we actually go out and hunt these things and do the investigations. So it's not just us talking about it on the radio. You can actually see it, which is kind of special, I think. It's fun. But there's a lot of cool stuff coming. So please go to the channel and subscribe. And just once again, thank you for everything. We couldn't do this stuff. Well, we would do this stuff without you because we've been doing it anyway. But we love to have you along for the ride. Let's put it that way. That's about all the time we have for tonight's episode. So we will see you again next week. And until I speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do we. Bye-bye.